Good evening. Hi. Woo. Hi, at least someone knows my name. Hi, guys. Thanks everyone for attending. Before I begin, I do want to apologize a bit for the last minute venue change. See that coming? I'm really glad that everyone. Sorry. I'm really glad that everyone got the memo and came by. We're sorry for the last minute communications, but unforeseen circumstances happen. So, really appreciate that everyone could make it here today. So, before I begin, I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Hazik, one of the organizers with Data Council. So, guys at the back, woo! Uh, and over on my left is Ayas, who is one of the organizers, and Alex as well. So we also have Ash, who's walking by in the Data Council t-shirt, who's also always helping out. So, going through what we'll be doing today, right? So, show of hands, who's here for the first time? Just raise your hands. Ooh, thanks. Clap of, round of applause to yourselves. Woo! Yeah. Thanks, Ash. So, very briefly, we'll cover 4 things today, right? The first is we're going to introduce to you a bit about what Data Council is, what we stand for, what we do. And the second, we're going to do the TDD, the data dump. Then we'll go through to the speaker talks, which you guys know which speakers are speaking, right? And then we'll have the job pitch. So now, before it begins, let me just say the job pitch is a 1-minute session. Shout out about whether you are looking for work or if you're looking to hire. So just have that in mind. I'll remind you later at the end of the event. Right. So first off, let's have a big round of applause for our sponsors, Fave and Vaz. I got it right? Right? Yeah. Okay, cool. So before I start, I would like to invite Jatin, Head of Data Science from Fave, to welcome everyone here today. And because he's sponsored, woo! I gotta give this. All right. So,
hello, my name is Jatin. This is my first Data Council attempt, so sorry. Good to see a lot of people up for the first timer. I just want to understand from you guys who is an aspirant to move into data science. Just raise your hand. Moving into data science in future. Oh, pretty less. Everyone's from data. That's good. Good. I just want to welcome to this event. Thanks, boss, for joining collaborating with us. Enjoy the session. If you have any questions, if you're going to network around, there's a good bunch of people here. Want to speak about with me? Definitely. Being into data for the last 14 years, I can help. I can learn a lot of things from YouTube, predominantly from India. You can see, of course. But yeah, over to the host. Welcome again. Thank you so much.
Right. So now, representative from Vaz, we have Ash. I will now introduce Ash because he can introduce himself. You need this? Okay.
Hi everyone. So I'm Ash. I'm CTO at Vaz AI. We're a consumer intelligence startup doing real-time consumer intelligence. I'm standing in talking because ideally it should actually be our data engineering lead Pam. I mean, you just say hi, but like Pam is feeling a little bit off because the jam was really bad just now. So she's like feeling a bit off. Yeah. Thanks, Faye, for having us in this wonderful space. Hope you guys enjoyed the pizza just now. I was a bit worried that there wouldn't be enough because there's a lot of people. And also really glad that you guys all got the memo to like come out. Yeah. So if any of you guys are here from the first ever Data Council, is anyone here who has been here for all 4? Right. Okay. So we only go one. Okay. So this is kind of a repeat of like Data Council 1 because we also have that at Faith here as well. And also we were also sponsoring MLB. Anyways, we've got great talks tonight, and I won't take any more of your time. If you're curious to know more about what we do at Vaz, feel free to check out. That's also our website. Yeah, nice to have your logo as your website as well. Okay, great, thanks.
Right, round of applause. Woo! The data dump is Alex or you first? Okay. Right. So, who has no idea what Data Council is about? Raise your hands. Right. That's fair in all honesty. So, Data Council is, we frame it as the no bullshit data conference. What we aim to do is actually bring to life a community which is deeply technical and very authentic. We want everyone to learn, grow, engage, and we don't practice any form of discrimination here. And we aim to achieve a sort of safe space for the data and tech community, primarily data, of course, to communicate, engage, find mentors, talk to each other. So the dream is always about growing the data community in Malaysia, and we're perfectly willing to go with that. You can always, if we miss something up, that's the email right there. Going on. So we have a lot of chapters around the world, right? Singapore, Thailand, London, Berlin, Amsterdam, and of course, Kuala Lumpur. If I'm not wrong, in Southeast Asia, we're currently the biggest community. Am I right? No? You don't know? Okay. Yeah, we like to think so because we dream big. If we're not the biggest yet, we will be the biggest going forward, right? So we have major conferences in San Francisco, New York, Barcelona, and Singapore. These are the 4 conferences that are hosted by Data Council official and not done by local chapters. These are the ones that people will have to pay for tickets and get all the great speakers over a 3 or 4 day event. We're trying to see whether with all this capital that we have with you guys to bring Data Council to Malaysia instead of having it in Singapore, because I'm honestly sick of Singapore. Yep. So the next bit is what most people consider their favorite part about Data Council, the data dump. So the data dump will begin with our good friend Alex, who will be sharing his topics. Round of applause, guys. Hey.
Okay, hi everyone. So just to give a bit of context, so the data dump is actually a curated list of resources and links that we want to bring to the attention of the local data community. So this is all curated by our own data council committee, and yeah. So the first one up is so there's this one interesting case study. It's a bit old, from 2017. But it's an article that basically talks about how BP, traditional industry, how they managed to use all of these big data technologies, especially in combination with their Internet of Technologies, and to do asset optimization, and they were able to save over a period of 5 years, like $7 billion by utilizing all of these stuff, and some really cool examples of how a traditional industry can apply all of these technologies for cost savings. So check it out if you're into that. Next one is an article that was shared by Monzo, which is a digital bank startup based in the UK. So this article basically goes over how they grew their data team from a single person to a 30-person team. And it shares a lot of interesting insights, like, for example, how, from their perspective, ETL is everyone's responsibility and not just like what the data engineering team should be doing. And it has lots of other interesting insights as well. So if you're in the process of scaling your own data team, it's worth to check out. And this is only part 1 of the article. So very soon they'll be publishing part 2 as well. Next up is another interesting article that can be a bit controversial. So, this one is this article is basically talking about how in the age of big data and NoSQL technologies, we shouldn't look down on the power of simple SQL, which is really powerful. So it's quite interesting to see how a language that was developed in the 1970s is still inventing the wheel all over again. So yeah, worth checking out this article. Yeah. So next one is so AWS recently announced the AWS Data Exchange. So this is like a really cool resource. They have more than 1,000 data sets from more than 80 different data providers. So they have quite a whole range of data, ranging from healthcare, financial services, location, and whatnot. So this is one to work out, to check out if you're looking to get started on some data to work with. So that's it from me. We're passing on to Ash.
Okay, let me just grab that. So I just have one today, which literally dropped like earlier today morning. So yeah, but I think it's pretty cool though. So this is a open source project that just got released by Netflix and AWS, and it's called Metaflow. And the part in the front there, Airflow plus AWS, that's what I put in. For those of you guys who are taking pictures, by the way, you'll get a copy of the slides after this as well. So for the previous slides, you saw the title. That's actually a hyperlink. So you'll get links to all of them, so don't worry. So what I think is cool about this is, first of all, like this like hot take on how much data scientist cares versus how much infrastructure is needed. So just basically, this is all the stuff that data engineers have to do, right? And the bottommost is like data warehouse. Data scientists don't care about data warehouse, but that's the one that every data engineer is like their nightmare. Yeah. But what's interesting about Metaflow, right, is so Netflix was trying to solve a very finicky problem. The problem that they were trying to solve was, how can I make the data scientists able to quickly iterate, and also at the same time, when they are done with like kind of experimenting on their laptops, how can they then scale out to the cloud very quickly, right? So now I have a batch job. Let's say I pulled all the movies or all the TV shows that someone has watched, right? And I want to run training. Let's say I've run it on the sample, and now I want to run it on every Netflix user ever, right? I can't do that on my laptop. It'll burn up and die. So how do I quickly then throw that up to the cloud? If I'm in AWS, like what Netflix is doing, I have to spin up a SageMaker instance, or I have to set up AWS batch or something, and then throw the code there and then run it, right? So what they did was they open sourced this library, Metaflow. And this is what Metaflow looks like. And what you can see is actually, this really looks just like a DAG, a directed acyclic graph. You specify steps, and then you specify what is supposed to be done for each step, hence why the Airflow part, right? Now, what's interesting is these decorators can actually be switched out for specific kind of built-in libraries. So for example, if you want to now run one step in AWS batch, you just change add step to add batch. And after you configure AWS credentials, this step now runs in AWS batch, just like that. You don't need to configure anything else. You know, or you want to specify a particular step to run with Conda, you just change it out to add Conda. And the blog post and the documentation, I think, covers a lot of the use cases, but I think it's really a useful way to kind of write out your pipelines and actually be able to then scale out to the cloud, specifically in this case, AWS, but be able to scale up very quickly as well once you've written out your pipeline. Yeah, so handing it over back to Hazik to take his part of the data dump.
Yeah. I know, right? Eventually, it'll be seamless, right, guys? Right. So the topics I'm covering for the data dump, the first one I'm covering is public data sources. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with data is plural and storytelling with data is free public resource. So I'm not going to dive into it, but basically, Data is Plural has been an ongoing newsletter since 2015, sharing all open source data sets that have been released. So if you guys want to dive in and maybe augment your data with public data, that is a very good resource. And you should also probably sign up for the newsletter, so you will get your weekly updates of what data sets are released. Storytelling with data also has an incomplete list of where to find data as well. Found it very useful, but it's very specific to which companies and what kind of data you're looking for. So this is more on public data and gov-related data. So it just helps point the way where you should be looking for data. So the next bit is, I work a lot with Jupyter Notebooks. Show of hands, who else works with Jupyter Notebooks? Great, a lot of people. So honestly, sometimes when you want to go to dev, it becomes a bit of a struggle. All the guys with the judging eyes at the back, sorry guys. But FastAI came up with this protocol called MBDev, which helps bring your notebook environment into development. Hopefully it helps the data engineers a bit more so they don't have to look at our spaghetti code too bad. But I haven't used it too in-depth. I think it's cool. Do check it out. The link will be in the slides when we release the slides later. Right? Right. The third slide I'm sharing is about machine learning is the emperor wearing clothes. So honestly, more often than not, we tend to mystify machine learning and data science. Well, this article helps dumb it down a wee bit so it's more human understandable. And I think it's really important because sometimes we find ourselves struggling to communicate to people who need business value out of what we're doing, and they seem to lose interest because they can't understand what we're trying to say. So give this article a read, and maybe it'll help you frame things in a slightly more simple way. So, and this is the last one. I don't know about you guys, but I tend to read quite a bit of research papers, and I enjoy them. So this link actually shares 74 summaries of ML, machine learning and NLP papers. What they do is they provide a quick 2-paragraph summary of what the research is about, a quick graph, and the link to the research article. So if you guys are into AI and ML research, this is a good resource for you to get primed up. In the same page, they also have a link to an older resource with 54 reviews. So if you're into that kind of stuff, this is the link you want to check out straight after this. So a bit of a shout out to the local communities. First off, of course, EngineersMY. Thank you very much for recording this live stream. And I'd like to say out all the communities, but I'll probably miss some out. So DevOps, MY, Google Cloud Developer, AWS User Committee, Alexa, KLJS. KLJS is also having an event today, right? Ruby Brigade, KL School of AI, and all the other groups, because if I try to mention all, I'll probably go on and on and on and still miss some. Right. So after the event, do use this link and leave a review, because we want to make Data Council a great event for everyone. So with your, honest feedback, hopefully we can make it better for everyone, right? So here's the part that most of you are waiting for, and I'm hoping that the speakers are ready as well. I won't be introducing the speaker beyond just a name, because I think I won't be able to do them justice. I'll let them introduce themselves. So first speaker we have is Wern Yi, from a data scientist from Digi. I don't want to add too much fluff to this. I'll let her do it. Yeah, round of applause. Woo!
That's how you do your job.
My job ends when I give you this.
Okay. So fancy here.
Yeah, whatever is fine.
Sorry, we're testing mics. Test.
This is the
Actual one. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, does that mean I can sit down?
You want me to hold the chair?
Yes, please.
All right. Where do you want to sit?
It's been a long day.
Yeah, all right. Where do you want to sit, actually?
Here is fine. Yeah, here is fine. It's like everyone's sitting. I like to sit as well. Hi everyone. I'm Wern Yi. I'm from Digi. So today I'm going to share with you guys my 2.5 years experience as a data scientist, which is ending, I think, next week actually. And this was a talk that actually made me very nervous, and the reason why is because it's a lot about reflections, and I want to do it justice. It's a place that I grew up in. It's a place where I learned a lot. And yeah, I'm hoping that most of you, the takeaways would be that firstly, that you really relate to this, or secondly, you get to think about how you want to define impact for yourself, because this is a field that's growing very, very fast, and it's, different people play different roles in life and in data as well. So just a disclaimer. Oh, what's this? Sorry. Okay. So just a disclaimer, I always view data scientists as rock bands. So you come together, there's no escaping. I really admire those people who are soloing all the way, but in our team, we really work as a team. So different people will have different experiences within the team. So I'm hoping not to overgeneralize. So just bear that in mind when I say that it's based on my experience. And another music analogy. So the way I think about data scientists, I know that a lot of people think about it as the Venn diagram. You have your business domain, you have your stats, you have your programming. But this is a little bit similar. I think about it as like songwriters. There are people who come in and they know what they want to convey. They know the story that they want to tell. They know what they want people to feel. And then there's like the composers who's very strong in the theory sense, and then they can turn what you want to convey into music. They can tell signals from the noise, and they can tell you whether it's musically sound. And then finally, you have your musicians, which is your executioners, who actually play the music. And the common thing among all these people is everyone wants to perform. Everyone wants to get the music out there. Everyone wants to get their work out there. And so today morning when I was showing like my colleague the slide, he was saying like, oh, can you tell who is who within the team? And then I thought about it a bit longer and I realized that, you know, we evolve across all these three depending on what is needed. So a lot of what I talk about ties back a lot to the roles and how you think about your role. Oh, sorry, I keep pressing the wrong one. Okay, so I really like this quote because this quote just says that data are just like summaries of thousands of stories. And today in particular, it's going to be about the journey to make data meaningful. So when I think about data impact, I always look at data companies with a lot of jealousy because, you know, data is their core, data is their asset. And for example, you think about Netflix, you know, 80% of what the members watch come from their recommendation. So, you know, the way that even making like a 1% difference in their algorithm, the impact is so much and it compounds. And then everything is tied to understanding data. But then contrast I think a lot of us here that we're working in organizations where data is a peripheral. You know, they were functioning without data for the longest time. They were making decisions. They were doing well. And then suddenly you're coming in and telling people, you know, hey, maybe you should consider thinking about it this way. Hey, maybe like the way that you're making decisions, we can complement that with something else. But then the question is always like, you know, I've been doing this for like 20 years, kid, like that kind of feeling. So it's a challenge because now like we are still, the analytics capability are inside of the business applications. But in the future, because you know, the field is growing so fast. Oh, sorry. Hello. Yeah. A lot of companies are trying to move their analytics capabilities to the core to support all decision making that's made. Okay, so my manager is actually very good because he always like gives me those kind of talks. He says like, you know, everything that you're trying to build, it's kind of like becoming a startup within an old organization. You have to deal with legacy systems. You build that and you have to think of how to park it within the system. And the very good thing about my manager is he tells me that, you know, my job is to give you as much context as you can to navigate in this organization. And I think that's very important and that's very key because we cannot build something that the rest of the organization doesn't find useful at all. So when we think about data impact, you know, a lot of people think about how do I turn data to drive decision makings, but there's so many conversions in between. You know, you have to turn data into information, you have to turn information into knowledge, and then knowledge into wisdom, and then wisdom into decisions. And then for one person to like champion it all the way, it's actually quite difficult. So I learned to appreciate the roles that people play in between, which is like people who give context to data and turn it to information, people who give meaning to information and turn it to knowledge, people give insight into knowledge and turn it to wisdom, and then finally you give purpose to that wisdom and turn it to a decision-making thing. So yeah, so this is just the phases that I went through trying to find my impact within the organization. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the CRISDM methodology, the cross-industry standard for process for data mining. So they always say that you start with business understanding, you try to find a problem you want to solve, then you go into data understanding, you go into preparing your data, modeling, evaluation, deployment. And because I started out my career as like an analytics consultant, and people at that point, they sold models as products. So for me, it's like, okay, you know, consulting companies are charging X per model. So every time I complete a cycle, I can like put a tick +1 to my points. So that kind of thinking was very shallow, I would say. what I created out of that, this is quite embarrassing, was something similar to a model factory. So they were saying like, okay, so how do you drive people to move from non-data to data? Then I looked into data packages. And then at that point, I wasn't even thinking of, hey, maybe I should build a recommendation system for next best offer. I'm like, no, I'm going to build 20 models for this. So for each individual product, I started building all of this. And I was like, okay, after building a product, I need to tie it to business value. So I added all like the potential revenue you could generate if my model works the way that it works. But then if you think about it, it's not relevant to how people think of business. There's so many conflicts. There's so many ways that, how do you embed this in decision making? It doesn't make sense. And that's why all of these models were shelved. And I have to tell you that I embarrassingly did this kind of things for like 3 times. I learned a lot about our customers, but I did not manage to deploy it as part of the ecosystem, because it's very important to know where we stand within the ecosystem. So an outcome was this, was like, okay, I want to be part of the decision-making ecosystem. So I was thinking, okay, so I built all these models. How do I embed it? What are the current processes that people go through? So you think about, there are real-time data coming in. How do you merge it with batch data? You build so many models. How does the system understand which models to call? How do they trigger the right actions based on the model output? Then how does the result flow to the relevant stakeholders? And then finally, like, how do you evaluate and update these models? So I was thinking from this perspective, and I tried to do like everything. So I would sit in like requirement meetings and go like, hey, so this is like a cool feature. What if we could do it this way? And then like after a few weeks, like it would expire, because then you realize that you can do cooler things with models, and you're like, okay, then I want this variable real time, and then you want to merge it this way. I want this triggers. If not, you keep adding triggers and you add complexity to it. And then my tech team just couldn't stand me because it was just not helpful. And then I spent like hours and hours just trying to like get this into production. But then this was a very, very long-standing battle, because again, we're trying to build something which has like implications in legacy systems, and some legacy systems aren't just equipped to like handle things like that. So yeah, so here is just saying that where I have control was all the models, but then I started trying to step into places that I don't usually step to think of how to scale. And then the third part was like, okay, I'm gonna like scratch everything and start fresh from the drawing board. So I went in and thought like, okay, no matter where you are in the analytics maturity graph, I will step in and help you get to the next level. So it's more of like, if people have been making decisions based on instinct, how do I help them build that kind of intuition with data? How do I actually incorporate insights to people who actually look into data day-to-day, reporting, KPIs, and all of that? And then what I realized was that a lot of people are actually at the reporting and KPI stages. So my interactions with a lot of stakeholders became what I would like to refer to based on that image. It's like a data dealer. So you deal them data, they take the data, they go away, they finish like doing whatever they need, and then they come back, and then they ask for more data, and you never know what it's for, but you're just like, okay, I'm doing good things. I'm like filling a gap. So these people, they want to use data to make decisions, but they just don't have it. I'm going to empower them with all of this. So I just kept doing that, and then you realize that it's not really scalable. And so recently, one of my colleagues, she's also in the data field, and she came to me and she's like, when filling a gap, isn't it very meaningful? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought of how disturbing that statement was, because we're not here to fill gaps, we're here to fill our potential. So that's why I was thinking, to get people to like the Iron Man stage, where it's like how he interacts with Jarvis, the AI, to make his decisions, how long will it take? And then I felt very lost, and I was thinking, the darkest thought that we all have in corporate, is this place just not ready for data science? Jing, jing, jing. So when with all this despair, and then suddenly there's always like people who step into your life, and like this person is called, like, he calls himself the Grand Poobah. So the meaning of the Grand Poobah is that they hold impressive titles, but they don't actually do anything. So we started out being part of this department called Revenue Management and Analytics. So we were all with the data people together. We were with campaign, we were with pricing, we were with market survey, and we were with reporting. And then suddenly we were parked in this new department called digital product and services. And I remember the first few days, you just know when you meet people like that, and then they just absolutely change your thinking. And he was just talking about, the power of recurring, what patterns you can see, and how do you create 10 times the value out of these kind of patterns. And then he also tied it to what he calls the equation of happy. He says that you always, the equation of happy is challenge multiplied by insight multiplied by solution. And he says like it's a multiplication, because if you are missing any one of them, you get nothing out of it in the end, the outcome. So it just really reframed the way that I thought about it, because he was looking at like challenges and business problems at a totally different scale. He was thinking of, how do we make our data relevant again? Make America great again. But anyway, so I remember just like sitting with him week after week, trying to define, how do we use this kind of data to help people? How do we use this kind of data to address a social need? Can we find a social need that hasn't been addressed yet? People, like even in telco itself, nobody wakes up in the morning and go, I'm so excited to buy data. I'm so excited to make voice calls. Like what does it actually enable? And what are the patterns telling you? How do you look at data from like multiple dimensions, and how do you humanize that? And how do you make it relatable to everyone? So this part is like the main part of like what we created out of it. So his main feedback to me was that you spend so much time talking about how you got it wrong, and then you're spending like one slide talking about how you got it right, and it makes it seem like it's a very rapid process. But I think we took some time. It took like so many sessions sitting together and talking it out to think about what are the pillars of intelligence that we can structure our data around that will make sense both for us internally and externally as well. So when you think of a persona, the challenges is like how we look at data in telco itself is very different from how other people look at like segments. They would think of segments as like life stages, and we think of segments as like the number of gigabytes used, for example, those kind of things. So how do we actually craft this kind of persona that makes sense to other people? And how do we offer an alternate channel? How do we open up more channels for people to reach out to their potential customers, and so on and so forth? And for credit, I really like this because like a few years ago, my boss, he sent me this video about, it was a TED Talk about how they're doing the unbanked in developing countries. So this is very widely used in Africa, some parts of Asia, where the mobile penetration is higher than the banking penetration. So how do you actually empower financial institutes to make decisions based on your mobile data? Especially those people who don't really have a credit history. And it's not because they did anything wrong or anything. Like sometimes you're in a rural area, sometimes you're just young, but then credit really can lift people out of poverty and all that. So yeah, this was another part that was very, very meaningful. And the final one that I really, really liked, because I found it the most challenging, is actually mobility. So based on movement, how do you actually solve problems from different lenses? For example, when you think about the power of recurring, commute is something that is very powerful, because you know that people travel in the same routes like almost every day, like Monday to Friday. And then how does that actually impact things like traffic? How does this impact things like development? How does that impact things like investment? So it's all these things that we started thinking about our business problems differently. I would say that all of this were built based on the foundation that we had internally already. It was just finding a way to structure it and think about it in a whole new lens. So for example, persona-wise, for campaign uplifts, this is a very, very common thing. And for credit, for postpaid, we give up credit, we give up phones, so it's very, very relevant to us as well. And for mobility, it all started out when we wanted to look at like store planning. So how do we see like what population each store is serving? Then, and if you think about things like beyond stores, you can think of, you know, even the cities, like police stations, like what are the people that they're serving? Are there places that are underserved? Is there a security threat to that? You know, all these things that we start having like more and more interesting conversations. And even for people like building bus stops, it's more of like, does it make sense? Is this a segment that would actually take the bus? Like, what is the car penetration, motorcycle penetration? And then you start wanting to build derived variables that are much more meaningful. So yeah, then we think about, you know, how do we actually scale these products? So then one of my colleagues, he built, you know, a dashboard based on open source, and he serves like currently like 30 users, zero cost. So we're like, okay, so how do we actually expand this to beyond? And how do we find partners who are solving good problems, the right problems, and empower them with this information? And also APIs, can we allow people to build products and interesting work on top of what we have itself? And finally, it's also like one of our mobility dashboards. I think this will help a lot with city and development planning. This helps a lot with traffic planning. Even if an event is going to happen, you know, we can look into how we can help serve these people better. So yeah, so this was where we ended up after a while. So this was the part I think a lot of people related to. You know, you start your career as, let's say, a musician, and you want to pick up tools. You want to pick up all the new languages. You want to pick up new algorithms, and it's all very exciting. You want to build. I remember the first year of my career was just spent building things. Like I told you about my KPI being model building. It was just like every time I deployed one, I just like felt like a winner. So yeah, and every time I used something new, every time I tried a new algorithm and it worked and I could actually articulate that to people, it was such a big deal to me. And the funny thing is that I wasn't very technical. I remember the first 6 months, one of our more technical ones with colleagues would turn around and go, do you know programming? And he would ask me that like every other day, because he is a software engineer himself, and he'll constantly forget my answer. But yeah, so then I tried very hard to like pick up all these languages to become more technical in the team. But then you realize that at the end of the day, different people play different roles at different stages. And when we're looking into building data products that serve both internal and external, there's a lot of context that we have to understand. So one example is that I know the business problems that I want to solve, but I never knew how people made decisions before that. I didn't know what parameters they looked at. I didn't know how to complement their existing train of thought. All I could think about was like, hey, here are like 30 decision factors that you can base your decision on. But then, like, why would they trust that? They've never used that before, especially store planning. How do you justify the ROI of store planning? If someone chooses this store versus this other place, this city versus other city, this road versus the other road, how do you find patterns in your data to actually explain that and tell them that, hey, you can actually use all of this to drive these decisions? So we try very hard to like run like correlations. We try to find like KPIs and say that, okay, how much that is like correlated to segments. But at the end of the day, that will kind of overfit as well, because you're looking at like 20 to 200 stores. Like, how do you even go about this kind of problems? So it's really understanding, like taking them step by step and understanding what features you can help. Like, what's the number one thing that to them they go like, if I had this information, I would know how to do this. So there's like data scientists who spend a lot of time in that area, which is what I do as well. So that's why we spend a lot of time like thinking about how to align on that, like not build something that nobody wants to use. I think after building so much, your number one fear is that I don't want to build something that sits there, because that is not impact. That is just like me being super KPI driven and not trying to be relevant at all. And then when you think about data product, like how do you actually test it? How do you actually validate it? You know, for example, we are modeling movement based on a 250 to 500 meter radius. Is that what actually that's happening? You know, do we need to go more granular? How do you model things that are more granular when all you have is just like data when people make calls or when people use their phone? Is that underrepresenting? Is that overrepresenting? How do you even think about validating that? So these are the questions that we think about all the time. And then when you go to optimizing your product, like especially when you want to make it very efficient, you don't want people to click on something and it takes like 10 seconds to load because you want to be part of their process. And then if the experience isn't great, people won't use your product anyway. So it's thinking of data science as a whole like other way. So I don't think of myself as like building models anymore, and have like being able to define that and being able to be okay with that it's very conflicting. So I think I really like this quote because the job of the data scientist is to ask the right questions, and I think this is one of the most underrated things. We recently had like a bunch of new kids, and I see like the same things. Like everyone is very excited to build stuff. Everyone is very excited to like show off all the new the algorithms that they know and like try out new use cases and POCs. But then at the end of the day, like who's there sitting with business users? Who's there sitting with decision makers, going like, what do you want to solve, and what are the success factors, and how can I help? I think we always assume that we know how to help because we have access to all the data, and then we have like, okay, out of this like 1,000 decision points, there must be one that would work, and then we base a lot of assumptions on that, and that's when it becomes very tricky. So yeah, and another thing that it becomes much more exciting because then you're no longer thinking about products anymore, because you're thinking about what is your strategy as a data organization. How do you become an organization where data is at the core and you build applications around it to support it, and your use case is driven from the inverse way? Who are the people you need in this organization? What are the processes you need in place to actually scale? Sometimes it's not even a technical process. It's more about how do you talk to people, how do you share your knowledge about the patterns of subscribers, for example. And then finally, how do you bring partners that would enrich your knowledge around this space, both from the data perspective and both also from the business domain perspective, because we're trying to solve problems that are beyond our domain. Who can we trust to take us to that next level when it comes to thinking? So yeah, I think like for the impact out of it, this is the extent that I have. And I think I just have to go through this slide because I'm kind of a troll. So my boss always describes, he was asking about ambition. I don't know if you guys have met bosses and head of departments like that, where they have a lot of stories to tell you. And they always start each lesson with a story. So he started out going like, okay, like, I want you guys to talk about your ambition. So, when someone asks you that point blank, it's actually very tricky. I came up with one that's kind of lame. So my ambition was to increase the probability of success with data. And he was like, no, that's not good enough. So then I did a cop out where I went to my high school ambition. So it's like the ambition that I wrote in personal statements, and I was like, yeah, my ambition is to be the catalyst between innovation and application. And he was like, okay, that fits. I was like, okay, I'm going to stick to it. It's been like 10 years, but I'm going to stick to it now. So yeah, so when he was talking about that, and he was talking about milestones, he was saying that there are milestones in your life where you call it like the moment of Zen, where you hit it, and then the first thing that you do is go like, you can like let go of the breath you've been holding, and I feel like I'm there. That's why I'm able to move on. So I hope that I could actually help you guys in like defining where you want to stand in this field as well. I want to take time off to think about how we can be part of this like ecosystem. I'm very convinced that there are roles that haven't even been created there are layers in between, data scientists and product managers. There's roles between data scientists and data engineers. You're just waiting to find like what value that I can bring in this ecosystem. So this is a mandatory post. So I had the most struggle with this slide because I sent this to my head of department and he was like, they're killing the Skywalker legend, right? So I didn't even have to Mandalorian there, and I was like, are you sure? I feel like it fits. I'm at phase 9, and it's the rise of the Skywalker at phase 9. But then that's why I added the Mandalorian as well, because you're also opening a whole new side of this like trilogy. No, you shouldn't call it trilogy, this saga. So yeah, so please like join us, like talk to me, talk to my bosses, talk to my friends. I can say that for certainty that I love my job. I still have my job till next week. So I love my job. I love my team, and I would love to find a replacement for myself. I don't know if you guys watch Netflix, there's this show called Irreplaceable You, and then she has like a disease, and then she's very worried about her boyfriend, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna find you a candidate. Like that's basically what I'm doing. So yeah, please like join us, and I assure you that you'll be creating impact. And the best part is that you can actually define the ways that you want to create impact. And that is my only sales pitch today. But yeah, do you guys have any questions? Feedback? No questions. It's like, I'm gonna go away. Hi.
Hello, thank you so much for the insightful talk. So my question is that probably might be a bit of a tangent, but there's been a lot of talk these days on the idea of ethics and data, in light of the recent scandals and the American elections and all of that. So as a data scientist and as that's been working with DG for a while, you mentioned you collect a lot of data that impacts collecting sauna, like credit and mobility. So do you face like any ethical dilemmas you're in, and like what's your take on that?
So our team, we're among the most like paranoid people. We have people who don't even have Facebook. I deleted Facebook on my phone. So it's like a conversation that we have over and over again, because if you think about the great debates, I wanted to title this talk The Great Debates in Our Team. So the great debates, like 1 is what is AI? 2 is do we buy or do we build? The third great debate is all about like privacy. And I think there is a movement towards trying to build with less. I think there's like 2 sides of it, because we have like people processes in place because it's such a big issue, and because we're so tied to Telenor in general. So they the GDPR is one of the most like comprehensive ones, and then we always think about how does this impact, like is this intrusive in any way, can we work on it with less? And I think while a lot of companies are thinking that I want to collect like infinite stuff, I don't even know what I want to do with it, but I just want to have it in case one day I figure it out. We're not trying to do that in any way. We're thinking about like what are the use cases we want to drive, and what is the minimal data points that we can use to drive that use cases, because we care a lot about this stuff, because we're consumers and we are constantly paranoid. We like read privacy notices. We just like we don't download like face apps or anything like that, even though our friends do it for us. But yeah, like that is something that it's very interesting. I think interesting because it ties a lot to the public expectations. And you see like certain times they're like completely okay with giving away their data, and other times you're like, oh my god, how dare you, like that kind of moment. So we're trying to define it for ourselves as well, what is acceptable. So yeah, I'm sorry, did that answer your question? Okay, do you have anything else?
Will you still be a data scientist after this, and why do you leave your current company?
Okay, this is a very good question. I realized I didn't cover this. Then my boss is like, you're making it so negative. You're making it seem like you're so angry and you just like cannot stand it, and you're like, I'm so done. But actually, the thing is, I really believe that if I don't have a deadline, I won't leave. Because when you have bosses like that, and people who invest so much in you, and they spend so much time trying to get you to where they believe that you could be, like, why would you ever leave? But for me, it's like, I don't want to spend my youth in a single company. I think I'm way too young to settle. Not to say that like being part of this is settling in any way. It's just more of, you know, you want to see the world. You want to know how other people do it. You want to build, you want to challenge your assumptions. I think one thing I'm very afraid of is false limitations. It's like you're in this organization, and just because, you know, it cannot be done within the organization means that it cannot be done outside. I think that's like nonsense. You know, I'm very afraid that I'll go into like the way of work and I'll never challenge it, and I'll be so comfortable in getting things done. Of course, I'll be part of building like great products and all that, but I want to know how other people think about these things. I want to know how other people build. That's why like I've been talking to a lot of people since I decided, and the good thing about being so open about resigning is that people tell you what they actually think. Because it's like you've broken up completely already, so they're like, okay, you should like talk to this person. You should see how this person thinks about data. And the best part is I realized that it's so different and it's so refreshing. That's why I need some time in the menganggur stage to actually define it for myself again outside of DG. Yeah. Is that all?
Anyone else on family?
I don't know if I should be worried that you guys only asked 2 questions. Was it? Okay.
One of the Nobel Prize laureate has introduced that human make decision either based on system 1 or system 2. I believe you are familiar with this. So my question is, after going through, I think, more than 3 years in data science, so now when you make decision, normally you are using system 1 or system 2?
I think I'm familiar with that concept, but correct me if I'm not. And one is a more deliberate data-driven decision, and the other one is based on gut, right? As some. Oh, sorry. So it's the other way around.
Right. Hope you all enjoyed the first talk. So, wait, let me check it. Right, so we're going to introduce the second speaker of the night. His name is Mohamed Diab. He is the lead data engineer at Mind Valley. So I'm going to let him start up this, but can you guys give a big round of applause? Thanks.
Like this?
Yeah. And slide is down.
Should I put it somewhere here?
If you can clip it, it'd be great.
Yeah.
Don't worry guys, this is always a struggle with audio equipment. I just put it, I reckon.
Okay, just like
yeah,
that.
just one. There you go.
Is it working?
Cool.
Which one's next?
Down.
Down, right?
Let's
That's a pretty cool picture of mine, right? This is like Instagram versus reality, right? But for your info, it's working great on Tinder, though. So I spent like 12 years engineering software, like any piece of software you can imagine, right? So when I think about any kind of problem, I don't care if this software runs on your mobile app, your web browser, or your TV in the home. Like I don't care. So when I look at every problem, specifically data, is like how we engineer this piece of software. So I'm here actually. Yeah, I'm here to tell you more about Mind Valley journey to scalable infrastructure, and also not only Mind Valley. For the last 3 years, I have been interviewing so many leads, so many people like Malaysia and even around. Tell me like how do you build like a scalable data infrastructure, and all of them they have been through this journey. So I'm here to save you time. If your story is similar to the first slides, run away or try to fix it or quit. Where this? Oh, cool. So every company starts like this. Let's build this cool, amazing app. Like I don't care if you're self-funded, get some funds. Like this is what you care about. Let's build the service. Let's develop this specific app. At that specific time, this is the dark age of data. Nobody thinks anything about data. Right? It's like we need to deliver this service. We need to make money out of this, right? And then you launch, and then suddenly those guys comes and we need some data, right? And then you start like shit, we didn't plan this from the first phases in the project, so how we can do it? And then you go to let's start with this solution. Get the same guys again who did the same app, and then let's create another cool app, which is a reporting app, right? So what's wrong with this? So this another reporting app that you build is basically another app for you to maintain. It's but no one from the business side can get anything done until the engineers goes and then code like the report itself. Queries are typically really, really slow because it wasn't actually designed to be like a very data scalable thing. And one more struggle is you have like all these business people come and asking like the engineers to, can we get this piece of data? Can you build this specific report for us? We need just a little tiny thing. Just change like the reporting. Just make it to a little bit to the left. This kind of like stupid request, right? Sorry, but it's stupid, right? Anyway. And then from the technical side, you have your architecture, something like that, right? You have your amazing reporting app that you did yourself, and your amazing another cool app that generates you money. And this is how you build stuff, right? Is that your reporting app connecting to the same database of the app itself, which is probably set up something like this, like master, slave, slave, and then your reporting app is connecting to one of the slave instances, right? So after launching this is, we're stuck, and this is kind of like really, really slow. How we can just make it like a little bit, better in a way, right? And then you come up with this idea. So instead of actually like querying the app database, let's have something in the middle that kind of like prepare data for us. And then you come with your first even like ETL version, right? Which is at this specific time, it's about just an app that runs some bunch of cron jobs to your slave database. Just add this data to another database that makes it much more easier to get the reports up and running. And then your team becomes something like this, right? And then you get like the same guys that have built the same cool app again, and then you split them into two, right? Some of them are data engineers, and then the rest keep building these cool apps. And then you have like one poor guy, like a data analyst, that's kind of like protecting your engineers from business requests. And this guy like has to talk, back and forth between the business, back and forth between the engineers. So like he really like in a really difficult position, right? So what went wrong this time, right? Your ETL that you just built is actually another app to maintain as well. So congratulations, you have two more apps to maintain. One of them the reporting and one of them the ETL. Second thing is like a really, really, really terrible error handling. This is more like more sleepless nights. It runs by the end of the day you wake in the morning and then, oh shit, like it crashed. Let's rebuild the whole thing again, right? Doesn't scale because just basically a server running a bunch of crons, and usually just enable batch processing. For batch processing is basically when you go fetch some data, like on a daily basis or weekly or whatever you want, and then just you store it, basically not live data. So again, we keep asking the same question: how we fix this? Is like how we make it like a bigger, scale, much more easier way, right? Then moving to the cloud, right? So in our case, we chose like GCP. Like I'm not here to tell you to choose GCP over AWS or whatever works for you, right? But just this is how you solve the problem, right? Is you don't build your own stuff. It's really like such a stupid idea. Like if you are in the middle of this, it doesn't make any sense. I have been interviewing guys like living this agony day by day, and building your own stuff simply doesn't scale. So finding your own cloud. So here's like an architecture that mainly most of the people on GCP, on AWS, you can actually relate to. This is how you should be building stuff. For sure, there's some tweaks here and there, you can make this better, but it goes like this, right? So especially in Mind Valley and like basically any other company that's trying to get things done fastly, you use like a zillion of third parties, right? Just instead of reinventing the wheel, let's use this cool third party. So we end up like some of your data, like on this left side, is basically on a third-party service, and then other part of your data is just stored locally. And then there's another cool stuff that also like has some data, and you need to bring this data too. So what we do is something like this: is first of all we get Airflow, which is how many of you guys know Airflow? Cool. So good number. So we have Airflow running on Composer, which is Google GCP managed service for Airflow, right? So this basically can scale to any level. It's just like a few clicks. Just if the machine is not enough for your data, just increase the machine, right? If your company are willing to pay, for sure. And then you get all of this data. You run your APIs. You fetch data from your database, and then you store them into cloud storage or bucket in case of AWS and this kind of stuff. So you have your own raw data stored on the cloud storage, and then you need some transformation, because most of the people working in that engineering, like the raw data doesn't actually give you the whole piece of information. You need to do some kind of like transformation to get this data ready. In our case, we are using Cloud Data Flow, which is like a managed service for Apache Beam, right? So it's like Apache Beam running on the cloud, can scale as much as you can, just increase the number of workers if it's not enough for you. And we got after we transform the data, we just store everything in our warehouse, which is BigQuery. And from BigQuery, if you guys dealt with BigQuery, Redshift, or whatever tool you're using, you can tell the difference between like a local database and Postgres and those kind of stuff. Like there is no even comparison. Just keep ingesting as much as data as you can to this kind of stuff, and it will eventually work out. And then once data is on warehouse, we can have like reporting tool using Data Studio, which is basically a free tool like anyone from the business side can be using. Like we don't have to go and build stuff for them. They can just go connect and get some data, mix and match some stuff, visualize. You can even mix data from the warehouse with your Excel sheet. It still works. And then Tableau for the most a bit complicated reports. Another thing that we have is enable stream processing, right? So the main reason why you enable stream processing is how do you want to act on users doing events on your app, right? If I open the app, right, do you want to tell me something? How do you want to re-engage with me again? When I keep just browsing your app and then doing a bunch of events, how do you want to do with me? Do you want to recommend me stuff? Do you want to send me email? Do you want to like engage with me somehow? So with event stream it's really challenging. You need like imagining like Netflix or something, right? When everyone is just opening the web app or mobile app and then keep sending some content, the videos you're watching, what you're searching for, all of this kind of events. The worst type of this kind of stuff is games, right? Like everything you do should go to this event streaming stuff. So what we have here is like we put a really scalable app which is like app engineers, like basically the API, does the authentication with, like other platforms that we have, like the mobile app or the web app, and then, oops, and then it failed. Yeah, but anyway, it's like this API is on App Engine, and I'm not sure how many people are aware of App Engine, but it's a really scalable, app, right? It's like just you put your app there. If you want to scale, just go to the configuration file and increase the number of servers you need, right? It does, and even there is an auto scale feature that doesn't require you much to do, right? You're not going to get like a new server, install it, add it to your load balancers, and this kind of stuff. And then the app engine is there to authenticate with the devices that we have. And then later on, it sends this event to PubSub. What PubSub is really capable of is get these events to one event stream and then reroute them as much as you want, right? So in our case, we have cloud functions listening to that event stream and then rerouting those kind of events to marketing tools, which is mainly required by the business people, right? Because you don't want from the mobile guys or the web, the web developers is to go integrate with all of the marketing tools that you have. Oh, I need this to be in GA. I need this to be in Mixpanel. Oh, I need this to be in that tool. Oh, by the way, I found this new cool tool that does this. Can we integrate this as well? And then you open their code, and then you see like a bunch of the same code happening over and over and over again, right? So with this kind of stuff, they don't have to do this. It's like they send the event to one place, and then we do the rerouting for them. And then after the cloud function is done, we install, basically we get everything into BigQuery. And then later on we can do, some, analysis or visualization or, some metrics and this kind of stuff. And the teams become like this, right? So still the, analytics team hates themselves for talking to the business people all the time, but now like they have another people to actually hate themselves even more. And then there's the poor guy here, the PM, that's in the middle between this crossfires, like analytics team talking to him, and he has to translate everything to that engineers or scientists. Like I feel sorry for people, talking to business. That's why like they're holding the gun. So this is like a really thing I'm really proud of that we have done after the key results of this. Because by the end of the day, you need to tell the business, okay, like why did you move to the cloud? Why this kind of stuff? Are you just moved to the cloud? You are super lazy to scale servers and those kind of stuff? For sure, no. The first thing is actually you pay much less than having this kind of like hustle is in terms of like the business value. Second thing is, for example, we took 12 hours every day, like it's one process that runs for 12 hours to get 1 day report. So like imagining what can happen on those like 12 hours, like you're late 12 hours behind, and then maybe like your revenues goes down to 0, or like just you really stop using the app and you don't know until 12 hours later. So we managed to decrease this number to 30 minutes. So basically every 30 minutes they get an update of what's actually happening across the whole ecosystem. Second thing is like kind of like an almost live streaming, live reporting for them. You open and you get a sense of how the business is doing at the moment. You don't have to wait until like the daily process finish and this kind of stuff. Self-healing is for us is like we recovered from more sleepless nights, and self-healing for the data itself, because whenever any of our process fails, it can actually heal again and then restart and get the data again by itself. We managed to like enable the stream processing and live event tracking. And everything I just described is just really few clicks away to scale. If you go back something like this, right? Like if you point at any part of this, this is just scalable. You don't have to do anything. Event stream is just there. Like put as much event as you want. You don't even have to interfere with this. Cloud function, it just work by themselves. Like you don't actually have to, create an instance or do something. Even with the previous one, it's exactly the same. You don't have to do anything much. It's kind of like a few minutes you can actually scale up. And like how many data engineers in the room? Cool. So like if you are managing data, and there's like so much connections between them. You have to do this first and that later, and if that failed, oh, can you go back and try this before I move forward? So imagining all of this is in the code. It simply cannot work. You need like an alien to just debug your code, right, and see like this is the order of stuff, right? But with Airflow and this kind of stuff, it's a way much clearer. Still, it's a bit like a complex tree, diagram, but at least it's understandable, and then you can actually check what actually happened wrong with this. And this is like the whole, how you can keep an eye on your pipelines, right? So this is like some pipelines that we have. Like every column you see here is basically like a bulk check for every 30 minutes that we have. We can know, okay, like the green ones, they are actually, they are managed to process the data successfully. No errors happened. If there is like an error or something, you will see like a big red square. So you can actually, now you can know which pipeline failed. And transforming the data is actually now makes much more sense, right? Because you don't have, again, to go back and then see how your code is transforming the data. You can just, open any of our, data flow instance, and actually you can see like how data is being transformed, right? What's needed, what's, being processed at the moment, what kind of transformation do we need first before we move on to the second one. And this is our case study with Google. If you guys need to know more details about, specifically some pieces of, this infrastructure, because I've tried to be here as short as possible, so like I don't go more technical with this. But anyway, this is published. And yeah, if you want to join our team, just go to the careers.mindvalley.com. Any questions?
Anyone have questions?
Amazing. Really smart people.
Calling once? Okay. Hi. You mentioned that all this can really just help every one of us save more time based on experience, but how would you go even further?
Further in terms of what, scaling or?
Yeah, in terms of scaling or even reducing effort in generating value out of data.
So the thing with scaling, like it doesn't need much effort, right? Because like basically everything is just managed service. So, and for example, something like even pops up in the cloud functions, you don't have to do anything. You just pay more for your usage. Like adding much value, the thing is for us to bring one more pipeline to the ecosystem, it takes much time, right? You have to go to the third party, read their own stuff, and then build your code the whole way in, make sure the pipeline, the source is working, especially if you're connecting to HTTP thing, like how much trouble you can get really into. But for example, with something like Airflow and just using some ready-made connectors, it's the time is way less, especially the transformation part. So for example, even like we actually managed to even enhance the 30 minutes to 7 minutes for the whole year, right? Just by tweaking some stuff here and there. So you can keep adding more pipelines. You can keep adding much more events to the to the system, and you can actually, with the whole data studio connecting to your warehouse, you can deliver like a really great business value. I'm not sure if this answers your question or.
Kind of. I mean, I understand how you're able to do it a lot faster. I'm just curious about what could be the next step based on experience.
So the next step is, for example, when we started this whole data movement, like the first thing that comes to the business, we need to get like a data scientist, right? And then if you think about it, right, is how you can get like a data scientist into your company, and you don't basically have the data stored, somewhere visible to those guys who can jump in and then start, analyzing the stuff. So it's all the work that's done by data engineers is we're basically serving, two main purposes in the company. One of them is to enable analytics team to go and find insights about what's happening within the business. And the second thing is to enable data scientists to come and then provide, like how we can make personalized experience for that specific, users or this kind of persona. And without all of this, they won't be able to do anything, right? Their life would be like a real nightmare. They can come with a really nice model that works, but if you want to put it into production, is like basically you can't.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
I have a question. So, could you explain a little bit on your rationale for choosing GCP for your data infrastructure?
Okay, that's embarrassing. So, so like I'm not here to like tell you why to use GCP or this kind of stuff, but we started with AWS first, and it wasn't really a nice experience, I would say, because for example, like something like Data Studio, right? Data Studio just free visualization tool that looks really easy for anybody. It's kind of like Excel in a way, right? And then when you compare that to Amazon QuickSight, man, that really suck. It's so complex. Like even for engineers, you need to engineer a report, which is like not supposed to be like a big task. Comparing Redshift to BigQuery, with all my respect to Redshift, is you have to still configure nodes. You have to tell, okay, like how many machines do you need? Like the storage, the memory, the processing power, and this kind of stuff. With BigQuery, you don't have to tell anything. It just, you ingest as much as you can, and you get it charged by the query, actually, the memory you're using. The second thing was the ETL, right? It was like Glue or something like that, right? And then Glue, like versus Apache Beam, is like Apache still, like Apache Beam is an open source project, right? And the community is really active in that sense. So with Glue, it's like it's an Amazon thing that actually the community is not that much there. So that's why it was for us like very easy decision to go to just GCP.
Hi, I've got a question like following up on the GCP thing. Like, have you faced any troubles like in the infrastructure because something is not supported in this region but it's supported in others? And what do you do to try to mitigate it?
No, for the region part, no. Is as long as you put your stuff in one region for your own, sanity. So that's no issues there. However, like, our main issue with GCP is just basically everything in beta, right? So you can, this is like how Google does stuff. Like Gmail, I guess, like was 10 years beta or something like this. So this is the only annoying part. That sometimes like even for example Composer, we spent like 1 week trying to figure out why it's not working on on cloud. And it seems there was like a really checkbox that enable beta mode, which doesn't make any sense because the whole product is beta anyway. So that's kind of like the most annoying part with GCP. But the whole regions, like no, like because I know what you're talking. Because AWS, sometimes if you put stuff, like in a specific region and the other stuff in another region, then you cannot actually like connect in between. But no, with GCP, like we didn't face this issue. Just the issues, the kind of like with the beta stuff.
I guess last question, if anyone has it. All right. Yeah. So can I know like how much do they charge like per month for all of that service?
So I can tell like I specific, but I will tell you some example, right? So for example, like the whole stream processing thing, right? There's a really famous tool called Segment. I'm not sure if you guys know about Segment, right? And Segment, they basically charge per user, right? So like imagining paying per user to track some events, right? So it was like a bit expensive for sure, because like we have like millions of users in that sense. So if you want to keep tracking, paying for everyone, and then that's really terribly bad. So something that we have done with the cloud function, like can you guess like how much we paid when we rolled this for 1 month, kind of like a test? Like the cloud function cost like $70. This is nothing. And then because the first, like the first layer is like 1 million requests, you get them for free, and then you pay like after that, like it depends on how many requests you can handle. But the first 1 million was free, right, per month. So the whole thing was like 70 USD for our cloud function. So pretty much cheap. BigQuery, you can just store as much as you can, and then you get charged when you query. And it depends on you honestly. Like if you know what you're doing and querying like less, scanning less data, so actually you pay less. If you write like a really You know, like dump query, selecting all from everything, and then joining everything in the warehouse. For sure, you pay more, but it's still the speed comparing to the cost is like really nice. Yeah, I hope this answer your question. And for something like Composer, is we pay by the machine itself. So like if we need a machine with this specific features, then we pay for that specific machine.
You have one more question or?
I guess there is someone. Ah, you, right?
My question is there any different approach when you are processing data in real time compared to batch processing?
Yeah, for sure. It's first of all, it depends on the nature of the data, right? Do the business need this live, or they just don't care about it now, right? So when you do like a real, for example, the events, right? What you're doing on your mobile app, we need to know this right now, right? We need to know like if we want to go to one of our tools and then see, okay, can you show me like the people are watching this thing right now, right? You need to know this kind of information, right? But for the revenues, like kind of like 30 minutes delays, like fine, like it's okay, right? We can just wait until like next 30 minutes to know like actually how much money we made in the previous 30 minutes, which is like not really like a big deal. But with the events, the analysis, especially for the mobile apps, you need to know this now. Because if there is a service down or there is something terribly wrong that happened, you need to spot this at the moment. Yeah.
Right, that was the last question. Thank you. Round of applause for Diab.
Welcome.
Right, so as I said earlier, we have one more bit to go through, and actually after this little bit, the other council team has a short announcement, so stick by for that. Anyway, so this is the job pitch. So if anyone wants to pitch yourself or pitch for a job opening in your company, raise your hand, come forward. You have 1 minute to speak. Anyone, show your hands? Right.
Hello everyone, my name is Marcus. I work with a company called Daimler. Have any of you guys heard of Daimler? No. Yes, a few show hands. Well, Daimler is actually the parent company of Mercedes-Benz. Right. Daimler, yes. So of course we're on the lookout for many talented data scientists like yourself. So most of our projects are actually not local. We work a lot with overseas clients, mainly from China and Germany itself. So, I mean, naturally you actually have to fly around and travel a lot. But if this is something that interests you, and you're willing to work in the currently challenging automotive industry, please hit me up. Can I use this whiteboard?
Sure.
Yeah. I'll just leave my email here. If you guys are interested, just drop me an email, or you can just talk to me after this. Yeah, I don't really have my corporate email address is really long, so I just don't want to fit it in there. All right, and if you give me a bit more time, I spend, well, as a assistant manager there, I spend a lot of time interviewing aspiring data scientists, so people are trying to get into the industry. And so far, I think we found a lot of very skilled technical people, but I think one of the major challenges that I face when I'm interviewing with people are, well, candidates fail to get to show what value they can bring with data, right? So if you're an aspiring candidate and you would like to, practice or try to, need some help or anything, you can also hit me up with this email. I just do it for fun and to try to grow the data community. All right, thanks guys. Right, anyone else want to have a minute up front? No. Going once? All right. Hi everyone, I'm James. So I'm the co-founder of Arrival. So Arrival is a pretty new start. So we are basically a smart city solution provider. So our current project is a smart parking solution that uses AI and mobile to replace the traditional auto-pay machines. And we have a few projects coming soon. It's one of them will be working with government and also the overseas smart city project. So if you are interested, please talk to me and my partner to join us as an AI engineer and also data scientist. So thank you. Right, we have time for one more if anyone wants to pitch. All right, so going once, all right. Okay, this is going to be interesting.
Hi everyone, my name is King. So we work for Summaries. If you have heard about deep learning for Jin, which is basically something like a framework like TensorFlow or PyTorch, but we do it in Java. So at the moment, most of our team is based in Penang. So we work on projects, trainings, and not just AI stuff, but we also work on RPA projects as well. So if you are interested in roles like deep learning engineer or technical writer, you can contact me or my person or William. Right, thank you.
Not likely that someone else is going to raise their hand, but really,
Anyone wanna pitch? Okay, just throwing it out there. No, okay. So anyways, before we end, two things. First item is we'd like to announce that we're going to be taking a short break up until Chinese New Year. So yeah, Data Council will not be organizing events until after Chinese New Year, so everyone can go on holiday and plan for things, and we all also have lives and want to go on holiday as well. That being said, we have a few things in mind that we might want to try out in January and February. Nothing too big, nothing confirmed. So don't write us off totally just yet. Look forward to what we're going to be bringing to you next year. We're going to have more companies. We're going to get more people who have experience and have all the war stories to share with you about data engineering and data science. And hopefully, we'll see you in March. Well, actually, hopefully see you very regularly at every other event, but at the worst case, Data Council in March next year or late February. Right, round of applause, please. And the last thing before we say goodbye or socialize for a bit, we would like to take a photo of Data Council 4 and for us to share on the group later. So, Ayas, where do you want to pose for photos, or is this okay? Right, so don't need to move, we'll all be in the photo.
Maybe y'all can come in a little bit.
Yep, try and come in a little bit. Especially who are you behind the wall? I think that's George. Nice. I know, right? It's like graduation. Top class honor. We got the. Kejap, we're giving. He doesn't want to take photos.
Okay. Okay, 3, 2, 1, smile everybody. One more. Okay, thanks.
Right. Thanks everyone. Have a great end year. Woo!
Next one.
Oh.
Okay, like it.
All right. I just forgot, but the feedback link QR is here again for you all. I keep forgetting that we have that at the end.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Speaker review.
Like,
Yep.
good luck, by the way.